First of all, KPIs are important.
This is one of the most important KPIs in cold calling.
Any kind of number, there has to be a story behind.
It's never that complicated.
It doesn't have to be.
Doesn't have to be. I was always irritated with the report, but I think it's just because I didn't really understand the numbers back then.
Yeah. I mean, what are you going to do with that information in the end? A lot of talking, nothing is happening. Keep it simple. Just keep it simple.
Always explain. Never send something out to your client and say, hey, that's your report, have fun.
It is what it is.
What's your favorite color for a KPI report?
Always green.
So, welcome to our second episode on our mini-series on tools that we use in sales. My guest today, Anna Maria, who happens to be somebody who has to work with tools every day. And the topic we're covering today is KPI reports. How important is that for you?
KPIs are, and reporting in general, that's the thing that we are doing every day. So in every our project, in everything that we are participating in our projects with our partners, we are doing KPIs. From the beginning of our cooperation until the end, we are always tracking some, so it's quite important.
Yeah. I think it's essential to build up your own system, how to report to a client, and to make sure that everybody, each side really understands what you're talking about. And in the first hand, you need to know what you're talking about, so you can explain it to the clients. We'll definitely cover a couple of KPIs that we find very important in outbound daily, and maybe some tools where we can show those reports. Maybe some tools we use. I think that will be useful to cover. Why KPI reports matter in B2B lead gen. That's one segment. Another one is how we use KPI reporting tools as a team. And the third segment is lessons and advices for better KPI reporting. Yeah, that's maybe the part where we will cover some of the tools that are there on the market and which people could be using to make their life a bit easier in sales, right?
That's the goal of KPI reports in sales.
That's it. And then we have a little game called Real or Ridiculous about KPIs. We're going to read a couple of facts about KPIs or fiction.
Okay.
Yeah. As you can hear, I'm a bit cold. My voice is a bit damaged, so hopefully you're going to take over with talking a lot more than me today. I have the feeling that we're at a really low energy today and very serious.
This is going to be a very chilled one.
Yeah, this is going to be a chilled podcast episode for once. Maybe during our conversation, we're going to lighten it up a little bit with some really useful tips for our what are the people called to listen to a podcast
Viewers?
Listeners. That's right. Okay, Anna Maria, let's just start. KPI reports, why are they even important? Why should anybody who considers themselves a serious salesperson need to have something like that? Or maybe at the beginning, what's even a KPI?
You have to have some KPIs, which is a indicator how your business is going in sales. That means you can track several things. For example, the conversion rates, we are going to get a little bit more deeper a little bit later, to see whether or not your campaigns are running well, if there are any troubles that you are facing. So you are supposed to be able to read through those indicators and to decide whether or not something is working well and you should continue with that.
Yeah.
Or you are facing some troubles, you have to adapt, you have to tweak in your projects. For example, KPIs in sales are quite easy to track if you're basing your KPIs quite simple. For example, in many CRMs, you have already pre-installed inside some kind of insights where the CRM is collecting information that you are typing in CRM, so you can read through those numbers. For example, conversion rates, how many leads or companies are moving from one stage to another, win rates, etc. So even some more specific ones, for example, how many calls did you made, how many emails have you sent, and so on. So there are multiple things you can track. The most important thing is to realize what is important for you exactly. What do you want to track, and how it's going to impact your business and your decisions based on those numbers.
Yeah. Okay. When we're talking about the purpose of having a report, we could say it has like a dual purpose. One being
One is for us.
For us.
Yeah, exactly.
So we know what exactly are we doing, or is there any progress? Is there anything happening that's positive or negative? Is there a positive or negative trend? And the other thing is a way to show transparency towards our clients and
Exactly.
to show, okay, look, we're not hiding anything. We want to show you if there is a progress, and if there is no progress, why.
Exactly.
And try to figure out what we can do.
When we are talking about the KPIs and the relationship with our clients, it's not only important for them to have the access to the CRM to see what we are doing, how many calls we've made, maybe read some transcripts or so on, to maybe dig a little bit into our process that we are doing. But it's also really important to step inside and say, hey, this is not everything. We're actually tracking some KPIs. Let me show you what we are tracking. And you have one view of a pipeline that is visibly nice. You can see how the companies or leads are moving from one stage to another.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, you have some numbers you have to interpret with your clients, with your partners, because they might not understand that, because sometimes our clients are not from the sales. They need to understand what kind of things we are tracking and what do they mean.
Yeah.
So if we are tracking the conversion, for example, how many companies in total we contacted and how many of them landed in a meeting stage where we did something, it's a conversion that needs to be explained to them and say, hey, we are tracking that because it's really important. It's the whole goal around the campaign is to move them towards the end, or in our case, in meeting stage.
Okay.
So there are some other KPIs that are important for us, maybe not for them. For example, the ratio between the answered calls and not answered calls. If the ratio is not stable enough, then it's important to communicate that also with the clients. But in the first glance, it's always the most important for them to see, hey, how many companies did we contacted? How many of them we had a meeting with? That's the main thing that it's really important to understand. We are tracking that.
Okay. There are a couple of KPIs that we track in every project, which are kind of the conversion that we want to show our client, and that is coming out of the work we are doing with the lists and while doing cold calls for our clients. Do you want to explain them a little bit?
Yeah, of course. So we are tracking some basic things. For example, how many calls we've made, how many companies we contacted. These are some basic ones. But there's a story a little bit deeper in that. It's based on a context, what we are actually doing and what our goal is. For example, we have multiple KPIs, but the three of them are quite important. For example, we are tracking the pass rate, which means from all the companies that we contacted, we were able to reach a certain number of decision makers. And from that number of decision makers, the percentage, how many of them were interested. This is important for us to see. Connected to that is, of course, an opportunity KPI, which is basically a conversion rate from all the companies we've contacted, which the number that lands in a meeting stage, how many of them were actually an opportunity, which is also quite important. And the third one, which is correlating with those two, is a telephone decision maker reach. We have to track that number, which means from all the companies we've contacted, how many of decision makers we were able to reach. It's not the same when you're doing your campaign and you are calling calling companies.
Yeah.
And mostly the front desk is going to pick up the phone for the first time. You're not going to land on a decision maker in a first call.
Yeah.
But it's important to follow up, to collect information, to use other tools. For example, LinkedIn, you are trying to find your right decision maker. Feedback is not a good feedback if it comes from a front desk, because you never talked with a person that is in charge. It's our goal to land to a decision maker and to collect information from them. That's why this KPI is also quite important.
This is one of the most important KPIs in cold calling, because you actually need to come through the gatekeepers and talk to a decision maker. And from that point on, you're actually doing your job well, or you have the opportunity to pitch your product or your service to somebody who is actually in charge of the budget or of the topic in the company. But one thing is, the telephone decision maker reach is, in my opinion, the easiest KPI to tweak and to work on, because it's quite easy to see, okay, if my telephone decision maker reach is low, there is definitely something either wrong with the list, I don't have qualified data in the list, or on the other hand, there's something wrong with me going through the gatekeepers, which can be learned and where you can really grow.
Exactly.
And there is training to improve that, and it's something that you can see very quickly changing if you're like into it, and if you want to do a good cold calling session, and if you are doing a good cold calling session and not giving up, then this KPI is really easy to tweak.
Exactly.
But the pass rate and the opportunity is rather something where you need a higher skill set to perform better. And
not only that, but there are more and multiple different variations why something is not working well when we are seeing your KPIs like opportunity and pass rate are not that high as you want them to be. There are some things that are impacting which you cannot change. For example, the market that you are targeting is not ready for the product. There's a crisis in the whole market, in the whole industry, in the whole branch. So you have to figure out the picture that is quite not as clear as you can see when your telephone decision maker reach KPI is not performing best. Because when you don't have that KPI well, the telephone decision maker reach, you have to look inside your house. You have to see, okay, what kind of list do I have? Is my pitch okay? Am I doing something wrong? Do I have the important information before I call? What kind of information am I asking over the phone? And so on. But with the other ones, you have to figure out a broader picture. You have to figure out the things that are impacting your campaign. Which is not always sitting in your house. It's sometimes just a matter of things what is happening in the market.
Another thing that's maybe not always something that's important for us, or something that a KPI that we are not responsible for on our own, is the win rate in the end with the clients. But it's really important to know that it's still correlated to our job. If we are arranging a meeting and we feel this is a good potential client, this and that happened in the calls, you should prepare like this and like that. When it doesn't convert in the end, with our clients, then I feel like this is something where we can help them tweak or see what's the problem. If it was a good lead, and if the client agrees, yeah, it was a really good lead, but what did they then do to make sure that this lead converts? This is something that's really not our fault if it doesn't happen. But on the other hand, for us, it's important as well to even know that there is a further step that somebody's going to have to take with the job we've done so far. So this is something that's maybe not really super important in the cold calling part, but in the meeting and the converting part, this is something that we are still very interested in to know.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the win rate, this is something that comes not at the beginning of a project. It comes a little bit later in some later stages. You have to wait a little bit to see how the project is going with everything, with every KPI, but also with a win rate. It's quite important for us to collect feedback from our partners. What has happened? Was the meeting good? Was that lead highly qualified, which is for us the most important thing, to have a highly qualified meeting. And of course, in the end, if that lead became a customer or not.
Yeah.
If you're having a project with a client that is never converted one lead to a customer, there could be a problem, but you have to investigate if there's a problem within us. If we are targeting well, if we are asking the right question, if we are qualifying them in a way that is useful for our client, that's all important. And it's correlated. Their win rate is also our win rate. If everything is working fine, that means that we are going to have our long-term relationship that we are always aiming for. So it is important, even though we are not participating in those campaigns, in the meetings, and in winning those clients.
Yeah, this is, let's say, the last step. And maybe one KPI or one indicator which is really important to consider before even starting a campaign or before even trying to see whether outbound cold outreach is the best option for you, or maybe even cold mailing, or maybe LinkedIn prospecting or demand generation, rather something like that, is to see the correlation between the outbound campaign and the costs. Well, the customer acquisition cost in the end. This is something it's really important to calculate and to see, is there something that I can even, is it going to be something that's going to pay out for me in the end?
Of course. From a perspective of our partner or client, this is always the truth. It's always behind, it's always somewhere here. They will always calculate things like, how much money did I invest in order to gain those customers?
Yeah.
And how much money these new customers are going to pay me? And in the end, the ratio between that two things, it's what is important for them. It's not only, hey, you are giving us so many qualified leads, you arranged so many meetings, but what if they are not gaining anything out of that? That means that they're spending too much money in acquisition.
Right.
Not only telemarketing, it's not only the thing of telemarketing campaigns. It's also spending a lot of money, for example, for Google Ads, for LinkedIn ads, for whatever tool that you might be using.
Yeah.
If you're not getting anything out of that, you could be a little bit crazy to spend so much money in those ways to gain new customers.
Yeah. Do you see how the times have changed and how important it is now, and quite easier to have a KPI report, to have any sort of report in regards to, I don't know, 5 years back?
Yes, of course. So last time when we were here in our podcast, we spoke about the CRMs and what we were doing before we had a CRM. So we used an Excel sheet. So it's quite possible to have a KPI report in Excel. You can create formulas, you can create everything, you can track everything. but it's not that sophisticated as it might be. And it's not so easy, to be honest, to create that kind of report in Excel. But nowadays, we have so much more ways to track some KPIs. As I mentioned, there's from CRMs integrated already some insights and reports you can build up there. So you don't have to have separate tools at all. But we are using in our company and in our projects, we are using some external tools because they are visually better. We can create reports however we like. We can track the data that maybe a CRM doesn't have. So that's what is important for us. And it's, of course, something that's a part of our job every day. So not only for me as a project manager, my responsibility is to track the KPIs, to follow the project, to make sure everything runs smoothly, but also for our BDRs to, at any point of time, they can enter in one dashboard. Everything is in front of them. Everything is in colors. If something is wrong, they can see it right away. We can speak about it. We can discuss what kind of strategies we should change, what is good, what is not, and so on. So there are several tools you can add to your sales process, but you don't have to if you're using a CRM. You have everything inside if you are tracking something quite simple. Ask me whatever you like.
I lost it there. How are you?
Very good.
What's your favorite color for a KPI report?
Always green.
Always green.
We have 3 colors, actually.
When it has, even when the numbers are super low, it's green.
Yeah, I mean, green indicates that something is working well. Red is the worst color to see, and you can check that with every hour BDR. When they see red, they're like, oh my, something is not well. I have to do something with that numbers. But yeah, the green is the best color in our KPI reports.
Okay. One thing that I remember myself thinking about when talking about reports and stuff like that, it wasn't really important for me at the beginning of our companies, or at the beginning when we started working. Well,
yeah, exactly.
Basically, started working in probably like 6 months apart, I think.
Almost a year.
Yeah. Almost a year.
I started
8 months apart. I think.
Something like that.
Okay. And then we had an Excel sheet, which was really nice, which tracked the numbers. But to me, it was like I was always irritated with the report. But I think it's just because I didn't really understand the numbers back then.
Yeah.
They weren't important to me, but because it was always for me about the feeling. But now that I have grown in the business, and now that I know how many things you can see with the numbers, and how many how much progress you can make by just trying to follow the numbers, or trying to improve them by just making sure, okay, it can be better, because there was a period when it was better, and there is another period coming again that might be something where you could try something out that you've tried in that period like years ago. So this is something that's really something where I now can finally see how important those reports are. But sometimes I can still see with our clients that they do not use it well.
Yeah.
They don't even, they kind of have a report, but I have a feeling that they don't even understand what they're tracking.
Probably, yeah. I mean, the truth is, it takes time to get into the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
As you said at the beginning, it was quite hard to face those numbers, because you were right. We didn't actually understand them well.
Yeah.
It was more like, hey, I have a feeling that everything is running pretty well. I do have meetings scheduled. The client is happy, and so on. And that was our KPI. It's our feeling, a gut feeling, actually. But it's the truth that you can see a lot of things from those numbers, from those percentages and everything. But it takes time. It really takes time. You cannot expect to start working in sales and now in 1 month you're going to be an expert in KPIs and numbers. You cannot do that. That's why I said you have to start with something quite simple. Let's see what kind of things you want to see. For example, conversion rates. That's quite simple. You have 100 companies that you are about to contact. From out of those, you had, I don't know, 5 meetings scheduled. It's 5%. That's your opportunity KPI. Quite simple, not complicated.
Yeah.
It's something you can start with. And then maybe try to play a little bit with those numbers and to see, hey, maybe I can track some other KPIs and conversions. How many calls I've made? How many of them nobody didn't answer the phone? Let's see the ratio between that. So it's just an example, but you have to start not slow, but maybe simple.
Yeah.
That could be the best thing. A lot of clients or people that we, I don't know, knew from the projects and so on, working in sales or not working in sales, it's not a rare thing that they are tracking something, but they don't really care or they're not following that. They don't understand it probably because it's too complicated.
Yeah, but yeah, I think it's never that complicated.
It doesn't have to be.
Doesn't have to be. And what I really see in the last year and a half or almost 2 years, since we've been using some external tools to collect, where we collect our data and have everything shown on dashboards, we can say the name out loud. It's Plecto that we use, and we really are happy with the tool. And definitely could recommend anybody who struggles with collecting data and wants to show it somewhere in a really nice dashboard and make it understandable for everybody.
Yep.
It's complicated in the background because a lot of formulas are being calculated and a lot of data is being sucked up into the system. But once it's on the dashboard, it's so easy to read. It's so easy to explain. And I have a feeling that since we started using a tool that can collect a lot of data from different other CRMs and tools and apps and whatever you want, it has made our life much simpler, much more simple. And I have a feeling that the performance of everybody in the team has become so much better because they just started to understand reports better.
Exactly.
I think that was the moment. The visualization is a really important thing with reports.
Exactly, yeah.
Because that's the way most of us people understand stuff, by seeing stuff.
Exactly. I think before we actually had Plecto as a tool that we can track all of our KPIs and numbers, we talked about KPIs all the time. We talked about that. We discussed that in our projects. We discussed about the conversions with the partners, in our team between BDRs and everything. And it was always like, yeah, I do understand that, but it's not there. It's not there. And when we created those dashboards in Plecto, you are right. That was the moment when everybody was, okay, I have a dashboard in front of myself. I can see everything at once.
Yeah.
I don't have to search for data. I don't have to click on anything. I have everything in the real time. I can see everything what is going on. I can track my own business and to worry about my project.
Yeah.
But what is the most interesting thing that has happened as a result of using that? It's not only enough for example, between the project managers to speak about the projects and the experience that we have from different projects, different clients, and so on. But it's also cool to see how the KPIs are similar in some projects.
Yes.
When we have a project that is, for example, I have a project with the SAS solution, and my colleague also has a project, and our KPIs are quite similar. But it's cool to see if he has some troubles or I have some troubles to ask him, hey, how did you manage to get that KPI so high? Can you help me? So that's quite cool. You can see
it improves
other
communication,
things.
definitely,
Exactly.
between teams and between colleagues.
Not only that, you can expect things in the future. Right. So I'm going to have a new project very soon. And I'm here for a long time. So it's obvious I do have some experience, but it's also fun to see I'm expecting a project and I already know how the KPIs are going to look like, because it's practically the same as other 2 projects that I'm currently running. So that's what makes me happy, and it makes me content because I don't have the stress. I know how to build up that project and what to expect from that project because I have a proof. In Flexo, I can see that.
That's it. Yeah, definitely. As somebody who puts up a new project and develops the strategy for the project, I think it's now so much easier when you know, okay, this is something that I can rely on. It's maybe not 100% sure that it's going to be the same, but I have a reference. I know what I need to expect. And if we go beyond those expectations, then that's fabulous. If we are down below, then we know where we have to tweak
Exactly,
and what's maybe a difference in one project and the other, and where you can find, then you can find a strategy and idea how to evolve something that's
of course
maybe not good enough. But if you don't have any reference to it, then everything's good enough or nothing's good.
Exactly, yeah. It's always, it is
Yeah.
what it is. I
Yeah,
don't
it
know.
is what it is. You don't even know. What are your lessons and advice on better KPI reporting? What is something where you'd say, okay, don't do that?
First, and the most important thing that I mentioned quite a few times now, keep it simple. Just keep it simple. If you're new in sales or you don't have as much experience as you would like to have with KPIs, just keep it simple. Start with something that really interests you and that will be the base for building up something a little bit more complicated or things that you really want to see.
Yeah.
Start with the tools that you have. For example, in a CRM, you don't have to buy another tool before you gain some experience.
Yes, sure.
In that case, you will build up something from your CRM, and after a while, you can realize, hey, I need something else. I need something more visually
Appealing,
attractive. Yeah. Or I cannot create some reports from what I have. I have to have something different. So the most important thing is to keep it quite simple. Don't track things that doesn't impact on your decisions at all.
Yeah. Yeah. A very interesting term here is vanity KPIs, where you just want to show off with some numbers that are good looking, but not really telling you anything about the progress or something that's nice. Like, you know, it's always nice when you see, oh, I've done 50% more calls today than I did yesterday. Yeah, that's kind of nice to have.
Yeah.
But it's more like a vanity KPI to just show off.
Exactly.
It's not going to show, that doesn't always mean that those calls were good.
Exactly. It's the context behind.
Yeah.
There are some KPIs you can track whatever you want, to be honest. You can track I don't know, a ratio between male and female decision makers over the phone. It doesn't
not
add
for
to
us.
anything.
Maybe for somebody who
Exactly.
tracks things like that, or is into the gender business, that might be something interesting, but not in our case, of course. Like meaningful metrics is the key here. Don't show stuff that nobody really needs to see.
Exactly.
And don't show too much. Sometimes you could harm yourself by having too much on the dashboard, by showing just numbers that might indicate that you are not doing your job well, but that's not the truth. So just keep it like, I would say, not more than 5 KPIs on one dashboard should be shown.
There are some projects when you are targeting less companies that maybe other campaigns or other projects that are currently running in a company. This doesn't mean that you your list is too small. Maybe it's better because you are going to have 100 companies that are a true match, and your KPIs are going to be so way better because you targeted perfect companies. And you maybe need some more time. For example, contacting smaller companies or middle-sized companies is definitely not the same as contacting bigger companies that are huge, really huge. But you have perks from one and another. It's sometimes harder to reach the decision maker, but for example, in bigger company, maybe you can reach different decision makers. You can stay in one company as long as you need to find a decision maker from multiple departments. But in smaller companies, you cannot do that because there's a high probability that a CEO is going to pick up the phone and it's going to be over. He's going to say, no, we are quite fine, thank you. And that's the end. Yeah. It's over, it's lost.
Yeah, and one really important advice that I think everybody should follow with reports, with KPI reports, is to definitely turn them into a dialogue and not something that's just a metric on a piece of paper, in an email on a dashboard, because it's really meaningless if you don't give it words behind it, if you don't have a dialogue discussing it, seeing where you can improve. Then it's just, something really meaningless.
It's only numbers on a paper. When you don't have the context behind that, it's only numbers. What kind of situation would it be to say, from my perspective to my client, hey, these are our numbers and our KPIs that we are tracking. Here you go.
Yeah, it doesn't mean
what does
anything.
It mean? He's
Nobody's
going
to be interested into that. They're going to say, okay, I saw this number now and I saw another number last week. I don't understand the correlation.
Exactly.
It's nothing.
You have to have something to, you have to explain.
It's not even the numbers. They're so unimportant if you're not talking about what is the subject of everything.
Exactly.
What's actually behind it.
Of course, with every kind of conversion rate, any kind of number, there has to be a story behind.
Yeah.
There has to be something to grab onto. For example, the opportunity KPI. It's normal in general to have an opportunity rates between 2 and 6%. Sometimes it's 2, sometimes it's 6. It also depends on some other criteria, but let's put it that in general.
Yeah, okay.
But if you place that number that you have to your client and say, hey, here is our opportunity rate, it's 3%, period.
Yeah.
What does it mean?
Nothing.
Is it good? Is it bad? How high should it be?
Nothing, yeah.
You don't have nothing, so it's quite
never
important.
Assume that anybody understands, even though that they're maybe 30 years in sales and they're the best salespeople. Never assume that somebody does understand what those numbers mean. Always explain. Never send something out to your client and say, hey, that's your report, have fun.
Of course.
You're going to harm yourself with that.
Definitely. A lot of people that are working in sales, our partners, never had an external partner, or they never had a cold calling campaign ever.
Yeah.
They never did that internally.
They don't even think about the KPIs
of
behind
course,
it.
And they don't know. How would they know?
Yeah.
There's no way to know that kind of information. What to expect? You have to set things straight with the numbers that you're presenting. And you have to say the expectation is between that and that number. It's usually like that in the projects in this area. Without that, numbers are just numbers and they don't mean anything.
Yeah. If you could summarize our talk today, what would be like the 3 key points that you would like to emphasize at the end of our podcast episode today?
First of all, KPIs are important.
Yeah.
It took a while for us to understand that. No, I'm kidding. I mean, KPIs are quite important. They are a good indicator to see how your sales performance is doing. If you are doing well, if you're not doing well, and where are the areas you have to tweak a little bit.
Yeah.
They can show the picture that is quite wider than only a number. You have to understand them to use them to make everything better or keep it in a state that works for you.
Yeah.
If you're working with different clients and you have to have the KPIs, just keep it simple. Everything that you need to know is already probably built in a CRM as a tool, like a report. If that's not enough for you, search for a good tool outside that can collect information from your CRM, your, I don't know, maybe a calling provider or whatever you are using. And yeah, I would say that KPIs needs more attention than they do have today. And I think a lot of people do not understand them, but it's quite easy to find everything online.
Yeah.
And to educate yourself with that.
You do need some experience
You definitely
to live through them as well. So definitely know your numbers.
Exactly.
If you don't know your numbers, nobody else is going to understand them. They're just meaningless. Have a simple explanation to every KPI you have.
Exactly.
And make sure that you have a good visualization of it. So people really don't have to search for those KPIs somewhere in between the lines. It needs to be very clear, very simple, very straightforward.
Exactly. Not like in the Matrix movie where numbers are just all over the place. It has to be quite simple.
Yeah, okay. We have a little game for the end of our episode. So I'm going to read it out to you. It goes like this: KPI real or ridiculous? And Maria has to guess whether a KPI name or description you give is a real, commonly used metric in sales telemarketing or something completely made up. Good. Okay. Yeah, tell me, is this a real KPI or did we make it up? Call to connect rate, the percentage of calls where you actually reach a human.
Yeah, this is real.
Okay.
It is
real.
Do
you use it?
Well, yeah, in terms of answered call and not answered call, because we want to see the ratio between that. If the not answered call is quite high, that can impact the project very much.
Yeah, and what is good here is definitely track the calling hours in that case and see whether you should just change the time of day when you're doing the calls.
Exactly. Okay. Not all companies are working at the same time.
Yeah, yeah. And not everybody's available at the same time. Sometimes if you're calling into a production, you know that they're probably not going to be able to answer the phone because they're actually doing real physical work.
Yeah, they're on the site probably at some point of
or on the site. Yeah. Okay. Lead warmth index, a metric based on how friendly the prospect sounds on the phone.
Well, that's obviously ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, it's quite interesting if we can track that, but that would be the vanity one. I mean, what are you going to do with that information in the end? It was nice call. Somebody were nice to you or what?
I don't know. Maybe you can give them a little prize at the end of the campaign, you know.
Google review.
Hey, thank you so much. You've been one of the nicest people I've talked to.
5 stars.
Yeah. First close rate. Percentage of leads closed on the very first call.
Oh, that's cool. We are not using that, but it might be real, right?
Yeah, it's real.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, that's quite interesting, actually.
I mean, they rather use it at B2C than in B2B.
Of course, yeah, it makes more sense. In B2B, it's when you have that kind of deal, and you call for the first time, you reach your decision maker in your first call, and they're interested right away. We call it a jackpot because it's really rare that it happens. So the ratio would be...
they're interested in getting more information,
of course,
sitting down on a
it's
meeting.
Not a win rate.
So in the end, this is really not something where I would say it's good if it's high in our case. I think it's better if it's low.
Yeah, exactly.
Because closing something on the first call, I'm not sure if that's any of our
good,
clients.
Sometimes they're not so that good. Usually they are not that good.
Yeah. Okay, then another one. Average objection frequency. How often a caller faces objections in one call?
I'm not sure how it would be possible to track that. So I would say that
I think with AI you could
probably
track that.
with AI, but
if you would be recording all your calls and having an AI listening into your calls.
Yeah, but that would be a hard work. You have to teach your AI what kind of objections are the most common that you're facing. What you're considering
nowadays,
an objection. Exactly. So
it says it's fake, but I think it's something that is worth considering.
Probably there's some tool that can track that, probably.
Yeah. Okay. Callback conversion ratio. How many callbacks convert into qualified leads?
How many callbacks?
Yeah.
Okay, that's probably real. So yeah,
that's real, but not something that we would be really interested in measuring.
Not for us, but
yeah,
sounds cool.
And then the last one, talk time efficiency score, the ratio between time spent talking and leads generated. Do you want me to read it again?
Well,
talk time efficiency score, the ratio between time spent talking and leads generated. Okay, yeah.
I mean, I'm not really sure if that's real or not. Probably not.
Yes, but it's believable. I mean,
Yeah.
Sometimes you have at our company people who like to talk a little bit longer on the phone.
Yeah.
Just being nice and friendly and kind of building up the relationship, but in the end, maybe not converting at all, but just being super friendly and there. So yeah, it's fake, but it could be real. You could measure anything.
You can probably measure anything. I mean, it takes time for you to engage in such a deep conversation with somebody, ending up without a conversion to a meeting stage, but I don't know. A lot of talking, nothing is happening.
Yeah, wasting time.
Exactly.
Sometimes it's just a waste of time. Okay, Anna Maria, that's it. That's a wrap for today's episode of Dialing Out, the OB2B podcast. Thanks to everybody who was listening today or will be listening in future. You can find our episodes on Spotify and YouTube. Tune in, follow us on LinkedIn. If you want, so follow us on TikTok and Instagram as well, but definitely on LinkedIn are the most insightful information about OB2B and cold calling and new clients acquisition and demand generation. Big thanks to you, Anna Maria, for being my guest, for giving us some insights on KPI reports.
Not a problem.
I wish you all the best luck in finding the easiest way to explain KPIs to your clients.
For the perfect KPI.
Yeah, and maybe find the perfect KPI and definitely, keep on the good work explaining people and having dialogues about important metrics, not vanity metrics.
Absolutely.
That's it. Thank you so much again. Bye.
Bye.